Before talking about other topics, it is very important to define what objective and subjective thinking means. In this case, we are talking about looking at things either objectively or subjectively. I will not go beyond that because it is very possible to delve too deep into the field of philosophy. The basic explanation of subjectivity would be looking at events or things and interpreting them using your own personal experience and emotions. Therefore, subjective understanding is personal understanding. Objectivity is the opposite of subjectivity. It is a way of looking at events or things by evaluating not only your own, but other people's experiences as well. It is a rational way of thought which tries to dismiss any emotional, biased, or personal positions of thinking. No one way of thinking is better than the other, but in the field of science, objectivity will always prevail, while in the field of art, subjectivity is much more suited. A work of art without or with very low emotional expression will be considered dull, unoriginal, and boring. Basically, not successful. Also, it is important to note here that while the artist creates the artwork subjectively, the spectator also looks at it from his point of view. This can lead to conflict between the point of view of the artist and the spectator. So basically we can see that every individual human being has his own subjective way of looking at things. And no one has the same subjective view, because everyone's subjective experiences are at least a little different. But that is precisely the point of artistry. It's to evoke emotion. If, for example, the artwork shows a painting of a war, then most of the spectators will probably feel anger, sadness, disgust, fear, maybe a combination of them, and so on. That happens because the majority of humans have negative personal experiences with war. They have maybe seen movies about war, read books, heard people talk about it, maybe even experienced it themselves, and in most cases, the experiences are negative. Of course, there are certain people who do enjoy war, thus their experiences while looking at the painting will be positive. But the point here is that there are cases where multiple individuals share a very similar subjective experience when they look at a painting about war. However, ultimately, they will still be different at least by a little bit. In contrast to this, an objective look at things doesn't seek to evoke emotions. Objectivity just seeks to explain why certain things are or happen, and it doesn't seek to influence the spectator emotionally. So you just gather every important point of view together and try to come up with a general explanation of why that particular thing happens or doesn't happen. An example of objective thinking would be how I previously explained subjective thinking. I explained it objectively because I left my personal experiences and emotions aside and came up with a general conclusion that fits every human being's way of thinking. Certain themed paintings will arouse certain themed emotions in individuals. That was my objective conclusion. Here is one more example to help you get a clearer picture. A first-person shooter style video game and a real-time strategy style video game. If you are playing a first-person shooter video game, you see the game world through one pair of eyes, the character you are playing with. Therefore, the point of view is different for every player in the game, even though they are on the same map. A real-time strategy type video game, on the other hand, implies that we are a commander or leader of a society. Thus, we can see what is happening all at once, not just one character at a time. Basically, we have a bird's eye view of things. However, it is very important to note that complete or ultimate objectivity is physically impossible. That is because we are humans ourselves, and every one of us has the same tool for thinking, our brain. And our brain is hardwired not only to think but to feel as well, and often both at the same time. It is simply not possible to completely shut down your emotions for a while you're thinking of something or explaining something. For example, sometimes you are a bit hungry, sleepy, or sad over something that happened 1 week ago, or happy because you won the lottery 2 hours ago. And thus, your thinking is influenced. Maybe not that much, and maybe you can wait until you feel as though you are in a balanced state. But at the end, your thinking will be influenced by such things, whether you want it or not. It can happen unconsciously, even without you noticing it. Of course, that shouldn't discourage you from trying to think objectively. It would be irrational to not do something at all if you can't do it perfectly. Like, for example, not playing a card game if you know that you can't win all the time. The objective and rational way of thinking is to acknowledge your human flaws and try to overcome them. This will minimize the subjectivity in your thinking and make your objective thinking not perfect, but optimal, the best it can be. In my future videos, I will try to be as objective as possible while talking about other topics.